Hello, everyone. I'm Claire Moon, and I'm a professional astrologer, and we're going to be talking about September 2026 astrology version. For those of you who are usually here every month, welcome back. You know what to do. I'm going to go through my usual order of operations. We're going to look a little bit at August. Today, as I record this, it is August 26th, 2026. So I want to reflect back about what we have seen over the last several weeks, and then we can move forward to September. Um, I have some announcements, not many. I do have a discount code right now. I just am about to send out my newsletter. So sign up for my newsletter. Although if you sign up right now, I don't know if you'll get on in time because it's going to send out in like a few minutes. But anyway, I have a discount code. It's usually in the newsletter. And this month it's Connect, Connect, for 15% off any of my services. I ended up writing a little blurb about Venus and Libra and flirting and how you can find things in your birth chart that will describe, reflect back how you might flirt, your different styles of flirting. And within that, I thought, well, what the heck? It's almost the equinox. Let's do a discount code. Um, so I think that's my main thing. I'm usually just doing readings. That has not changed. Doing readings full time. I do astrology readings, tarot readings, divination, the dice, the cards, the stars, all of the things. So check all of that out on my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com. It's all on there. You can learn more about me if you're new to me. Hi, I'm Claire. I'm a professional astrologer, as I mentioned, and you can find out all of my About Me thingies on my About Me section. So I think that's it. I think that's me. Let's see. Yeah, yeah, I think that's it. Let me see if there's anybody here. It is the middle of a weekday, so I don't necessarily expect too many people live. If you do show up, you can always ask me questions in the chat. There is a chat to the left hand, no, right hand side of your screen, and I check on it a few times during the next 2 hours. There's about a 20-second delay between what you type in there and me being able to see it. So I think that's my nuts and bolts. Let us start to look at the sky. Um, I'm going to read off the dates of interest for the month ahead, and then we'll reflect a little bit and then move on. So, as I record this again, we're at the end of August. We're building into a Mars-Saturn square and a Jupiter-Saturn trine, and that perfects on the 1st of September. So, these couple configurations come together perfectly on the 1st of September, and that's how the month starts off. And the next thing is on the 10th of September, Venus enters Scorpio. There's a few things on the 10th. Venus enters Scorpio, Mercury enters Libra, there's a Virgo New Moon, and Uranus stations retrograde. So that's a big chunk of the month. There's a vibe shift from the 10th onward. Around mid-month, depending on your location, you're going to start to see Mercury rising in the evening sky after sunset. Slowly, you'll be able to see Mercury more and more and more in the evening sky. On the 17th of September, Chiron is re-entering, returning to Aries. On the 22nd, the sun enters Libra. We have our equinox. On the 26th, an Aries full moon. On the 27th, Mars enters Leo. And on the 30th, Mercury enters Scorpio. So that's the month at a glance. But before we move forward, let's look back. So around the time that Mars entered into Cancer, so a couple old things, old business. When Mars entered Cancer, that was around August 11th. Uh, those ingresses, those whole sign ingresses, which is just a fancy word for when a planet enters a new sign, they tend to be loud. If anyone, I'm kind of dating myself, but if anyone watched Seinfeld, whenever Kramer bursts into a room, that's like when a planet does an ingress, when a planet enters a sign. Sometimes there's like this loud moment. So that's the day that my shocks died on my car. So I had to get my shocks replaced. It was very loud and scary. But also, what happened was kind of a funny story. Content warning, if you have kids around, it's time to muffle their ears because this is a spicy news story. In three, two, one, not child appropriate, not safe for work. I'm gonna put, if I didn't below, I'm gonna put it below, but it's a Vice story. You can just Google Vice. But on August 12th, there was a bomb squad called in to look at an object that turned out to not be a bomb, but a sex toy. So there you go. And who was Mars upon that ingress? Who were they interacting with? Neptune. We had a Mars-Neptune square. Neptune, Lord of Confusion. And that Lord of Confusion raining their confusing little love beams down onto Mars. And last month, August was really tough. Early mid-August, there was just a lot of muddiness, murkiness in Mars things, Mars actions, decisions, conflicts. So, that's done. That has concluded. And now, quite contrary, Mars is moving into a square with the planet that's all about realism and what is not confusing, what is certain, what is defined. And that can be really helpful. I think for the most part, a lot of us are going to be experiencing that Mars wanting to move forward with a thing, wanting to do, wanting to decide, act, whatever they're up to. Mars is our effort and our energy. And they're running into some kind of Saturnian little stop, little pit stop, little wayside rest, delay, a little moment of doubt, or even really like skillful doubt. Like, hey, before we proceed, are there any prerequisites that need to happen? Do we need to do XYZ before we proceed? So I would say as we move from August into September, one piece of unsolicited advice is to take it easy. If you're noticing a lot of obstacles, delays, resistance, slowness, that is kind of going to be the case as August wraps up. We want to go at a certain pace and it's going to be hard to do so. So accept that. Don't be hard on yourself. If you're noticing, yeah, you're not getting to where you want toward the end of the month. And then Mars is going to be much more free after that to move forward, do the things it needs to do, go at the pace that it wants to go at. So that's going on. The cardinal signs have been and will continue to be compromised for elections, for rising signs for another month. This is really the case until through September 27th when Mars leaves Cancer. So, yep, another month in September of a hard time trying to use cardinal rising signs for your elections. So that's going on. The eclipses have been going on just in the last 24 hours. We have lost Dolly Parton and Tim Curry. Rest in peace. Wow. Dolly clocking into her 9 to 5 in heaven. Thank you. I'm really happy that like she just really did it till the end. Wow. Amazing. So the eclipses strike, and I'm not a causal person. I don't believe that the planets are like hiding around a corner, getting ready to leap out and do something. And since 2000 years ago, when eclipses happen, people in power, especially very powerful or highly esteemed or highly known people, are going to be affected by those much more than like a plebe like me, you know. So we do notice during eclipses sometimes that we lose or gain a very prominent figure in the public sphere. So not a huge surprise, but you know, there's always some, and that's who it was this time. Another thing I noticed, and this is more news story, so now we're getting into content warning news about world stuff, in particular, public health world stuff. Something I heard on the news on NPR was that there has been for a while now, for many months, there's been an Ebola crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It started for a while, they were saying it started in May. It actually started in February. And now that was when we had our last set of eclipses. 6 months later, now there is this breaking point, this crisis point that's happening where workers, healthcare workers, are under-resourced, asked to do a lot, and they are getting burnt out and they're walking off the job. So there's this inflection point that's happening right now in that crisis. So we're going to keep watching that, especially on this eclipse clock. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. I did have another news story, but I think that's enough attention on that kind of stuff. Then I think the only other kind of general thing to think about here is I did want to look at declination. I've been looking at declination a little bit more. So this last month in August, we've had Mars out of bounds. And I was kind of curious, just a few days ago, we had a Mars moon opposition. And, usually these are days, this is like a mind your own business type of day, a mind your own business type of transit. Historically, you'll read like hard aspects of Moon and Mars are like the ancient astrologers would say, fights with women. So we avoid these things, we avoid conflict if you don't want to have one. They're more likely to happen when planets, especially the moon, is in a hard aspect with Mars, an opposition or a square. But I was curious because they're at such different declination, different height in the sky. So similar to like eclipses, usually the sun and the moon are doing their own paths. During an eclipse, their height in the sky is the same, so they can block each other out. So it's a special type of conjunction versus other conjunctions of the sun and the moon. They're not quite crossing each other's paths. They're going more like this. So they're not the same on the up and down axes, even if by the east and west axes they're together. So we're looking really not just at 2D, but more than that, we're looking at two planes of reference, an X and a Y axis, if you will. And so this last opposition we had, the moon was really southerly. There's declination was 26 degrees south versus Mars was at 23 degrees north. So really different in declination, even though this opposition perfected on the 23rd. And my kind of theory with it is that this would be an amelioration, that this would take the edge off of it, take the sharpness off of this. And to be honest, for me, it did. That's an N of one. I got to be wary of conflict or not conflict, the bias, whatever bias that is, where we tell ourselves it's the thing when it's not. Confirmation bias. So I got to watch out about confirmation bias, N of one. But I did notice that it was a pretty chill Moon-Mars opposition. And I was in a context where there could have been some confrontation. Like I need to have a conversation with someone actually, and that person avoided me on this day. So I thought that was really interesting. And I might have saved this little nuance for office hours, which is my other monthly offering that I do for free live on YouTube. It's every second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Central Time. Office hours. I'll probably be talking about this there too. But this is way far afield. This is in October. We're going to have a Mars-Pluto opposition where the declination is very different again. And so I'm secretly hoping that that will take the edge or ameliorate this upcoming in about a month and some change, the upcoming Mars-Pluto opposition in early October. because they're not going to be at the same declination. And again, I'm trying to use that more and more in my analysis to add a layer of nuance. Also, happy Mercury Kazemi today, tomorrow. Lord of Nuance, Virgo. We got a Virgo, Mercury, Kazemi. So I'm hoping today on the 26th, tomorrow maybe even, I hope that everyone's having their little moments of clarity, little moments of clarity around Mercury things, around Virgo or Gemini house topics in your birth chart. So have a nice time. Of course, this is locking into the eclipse that we're also having very soon. So good luck with the second eclipse in this series. I talked about it last month pretty thoroughly, so go check out last month's forecast if you want to hear what I said about that second eclipse that we're about to have. Square Uranus. Pretty interesting. All right. I think that's all my old business. Talking about declination. New business. If you have any planets in the middle of signs, you might notice there's just a lot of action in the middle of signs as this month opens up. So like 10 to 19 degrees or so. If you've got planets around there, you're going to maybe be noticing more meaningful things happening, busier life things happening. These planets are going to be hitting your planets a little bit more. Early Libra transits, again, lock planets in with these outers. And so last month we had Venus entering into Libra, having that kind of kite formation with the outers. And coming up pretty soon, we're going to have the Sun move into that place and Mercury. So we'll watch as those planets enter Libra. Remember that they're also going to be locking in with all of that outer planet stuff. And then finally, I'm going to be at UAC. Come say hi to me at the conference. I'm going to be there starting on the 2nd. So I'll be there early and then I'll be there through to the 9th, with the exception of the 6th. I am getting out on the 5th. I'm going to buzz to my home in Madison, which is like 3 hours away. It's frivolous, but I just need a reset. And then I'm going to come back for the last few days. So it's kind of funny. Maybe I'm showing how I operate a little bit too much, but I kind of thought, you know what day of the conference I'm gonna skip? I'm gonna skip the days when the moon is with Mars. Let's just skip it. So I'm gonna skip it. So I'll be there the whole time the moon is in Taurus and Gemini, and then I'll be back for when the moon is in Leo. I'll be at the last day doing Austin Coppock's Dorothean Elections workshop. So I'm about to get even better at elections. It's going to be really good. I'm really excited to binge lectures. So if you are there, I've already talked to a few clients, a few people who are going to be there. So I'm actually very relieved because I'll be seeing some familiar faces. Full disclosure, I am an anxious mess of a person. Um, like I have social anxiety. Full disclosure. If I'm off in a corner looking kind of weird, it's fine. Come say hi. And if I see you and I recognize you, I'm going to try to come say hi. So we'll all try to come say hi to each other. But yeah, if you see me, come say hi. And yeah, I'll be around for many days. And then also on the 2nd, I am going to be speaking on a panel for the Young Astrologer Association. Now, I'm not the youngest in the world. I'm almost 40, but relatively speaking, I'm kind of youngish. I'm kind of new. I've been around for like 8 years, but kind of new. So I'm gonna be on that panel. I don't know, as like the queer, gender fluid person. We're talking about community, inclusivity. I'm gonna be there with Celeste, if anyone's familiar with their astrology work, Astrology by Celeste. And I think there's gonna be someone from the ISAR board, but I don't know who. There's gonna be a third person on the panel. But it should be fun. We're gonna talk about community. especially after everything that's been happening this month. Oh, and that's another really good announcement before we jump into things. So if you are part of the astrology community or even the scene, the whatever, if you're online, you might have noticed. So it was like right after my last forecast at the end of July. Like we were dealing with a lot of basically like a flare up of overt racism in the community, content warning for racism, um, racial trauma. There was a really big episode of that. Now, I have not talked about that on my forecast at all, but I did address it on threads in writing if you are interested in my thoughts on that whole community situation. And also, I expounded on it verbally at my last office hour for about a half hour. So if you want to hear me talk about this issue verbally, with like a lot of intention and focus on that, go look at my last office hour for August. And that's where you're going to find my most comprehensive thoughts on the matter, along with my writings on threads. I'm going to leave it there for the forecast, but I did want to tell people that that exists if anyone is wondering if I was going to talk about it here. I've already addressed it. I think that's it. I think that was my last announcement that I forgot. And I think that's all my new business. Um, Yay, communities, scenes, affinity groups, whatever we're calling them. Yeah. Ah, it'll be interesting. I'm going to come back around, and then after that panel next month, I'll share my synopsis and kind of debrief on what that experience was like. Yeah, I'll do that later. I'll do that next month after I've experienced it. But that's a great segue into the first part of the month because this is the first week of September is UAC. And I can see why they chose this month or this week. It was, it's hard to pick. I can't imagine trying to elect an entire week, you know? Like it's hard enough to find one or two good days in astrology, but to try to find a whole good week? But they did a really good job. So whoever elected the UAC timing, I think they did a pretty good job. I don't think I could have done any better. We have Mercury in Virgo. We got Venus in Libra. So yeah, I guess some other general thoughts for the month ahead that if you have things to do in September, if you have purchases to make, important conversations to have, earlier in the month is better. The later September goes on, the weirder it gets. So I would recommend to front load September with as much of your important stuff as possible. Um, yep. And then one little caveat to this, and this is why, like, especially early in the month, because once we even get to like September 10th, then we're going to have Mercury opposing Saturn, which is not great. Like, usually when I'm talking about handing in applications or making requests, I'm trying to get the moon and like Mercury applying to Jupiter or Venus. When the moon is applying to Saturn, that's my times I'm usually given to not make requests, not do your applications. Also, when Mercury is in hard aspect to Saturn, um, that is also not great. Now I'm like having a meta thought. I don't know if I just said Pluto or if I was thinking Pluto, but if I did, I meant Saturn. Yeah, Saturn is not helpful for requests or handing in applications. And so starting like September 10th through like the 18th of September, we've got to deal with that. So again, try to front load like the first 10 days of the month with your requests, things like that, as early as possible. Yeah, even like the 8th or 9th. There's some good times in there, but yeah, and then the last week of the month of September, I don't recommend for a lot. We're starting to get into that first week of October, which besides April is like my other pink flag for 2026. My two big flags for 2026 to watch, to notice with caution and heedfulness was the astrology of April in Aries, that Mars-Saturn conjunction. That was a whole trip. The next one is the first 2 weeks of October, which really get cooking in the last part of September. So we're gonna get there. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of why I'm saying that. Mercury is under the beams this month. Mercury is not visible, but they are in Virgo, so it doesn't really bother them as much. They're functional, they're able to do all their Mercury things while they're in Virgo. But that being said, I do think that for the first half of the month, when Mercury is not visible, we're going to have that planning, words, communications a bit quieter, purchasing a bit quieter, just not a big external deal to share with people, less sharing of information. Second half of the month, Mercury is visible, more information coming out, being shared, more like sharing of purchases that you've made, if, or, you know, just kind of purchases happening more readily, potentially in the second half of the month with Mercury out of the beams. And again, first week is the best week, I think, for handling logistical matters, the first week of September. We do have, final note, the outer planets, we're going to have Neptune and Pluto coming into an exact sextile. And that's going to be on the 15th of September. But really, like, this is the whole month of September, is this perfecting, this extreme tight sextile between Pluto and Neptune. Um, it characterizes the whole month. But it's kind of like characterizing the whole year. I mean, even last month, they're like, what, a degree away from each other. So even though they're perfecting and let's dial up the volume on it a bit, is it really that big of a deal compared to like what they've already been doing? Like, I don't know how different it's going to be because they've already been so close and loud. I don't know how much of a thing this is going to be if something's dialed up to like 95% of its volume for like 3 months, and then for 1 month you dial it up to 100. Okay, like that doesn't really change my experience much. So I don't know if like that exact perfection, what that's going to bring or reflect, but I'm not convinced that we're going to notice that much of a difference from what we've already been experiencing with this basket for the last several months, which has been tight for the last several months. So, but that is perfecting this month, the sextile between Pluto and Neptune. And then if we remember back to July, July was when we had Neptune Uranus perfecting. They did their little perfect moment, and now it'll be Uranus and Neptune. Okay, those are my overall thoughts for the month. Let me see if anyone has any concerns or questions, and then we will dive into the month. Oh, wow, there's folks here. Hello. Someone says Kramer entering. So when I was talking about Kramer entering the room with planets doing their ingress, Mars in Cancer, more like Newman entering the room. 100% Newman entering the room. Yes, 10 out of 10. That is correct. Uh, yeah, all right. Other people also have been afflicted with social anxiety. You know what it's like then. I know, and I know I'm not the only one. It is what it is. I know it's very sadly common. So we'll all just be awkward together until we're not. And it'll be great. It's gonna be fun. I've been telling myself, like, when you've got like a child that's nervous to do something, you like try to say, like, oh, it's gonna be so much fun. You're gonna do this and that, you're gonna see this person. And like that's what I've been doing to myself to try to be like, all right, it's gonna be cool. Italy is right there. I can have pasta. There's this store within like a block of the UAC, the United Astrology Conference. And it's got like a billion types of pasta. It's all the pastas you could ever imagine. And So if you're at UAC, head over to the pasta store. Not a friend of the show, but I might be hiding in Italy. If you need me and you can't find me, it's probably because I'm in Italy hiding and eating gelato or something. Okay, that's going to be my special treat. All right, everyone. Yeah, we are the most cool and fun. Okay, let's look at the months. I'm just like still so pleased with myself that I finally figured out how to make the wheel stop. It looks so much better. It looks so much better. Um, okay. So September 1st is, yeah, Mars finally reaching, starting to separate, but we're gonna have the dregs of this square going on for the first few days of September. And so again, I had mentioned if at the end of August, like right now, basically this week, if you feel like there's issues with your pacing, running into obstacles, delays, challenges, if there's just like a tension going on that seems a little bit more than normal, or maybe you feel fine, but there is just a certain like you're kind of trying to work through a thing or problem solve a thing. That's the energy of that Mars-Saturn square. It can be frustrating, and I don't like to tell people how they're going to feel during a transit because, I've had times where like something breaks and I'm dealing with it and I'm in a good mood and I'm fine. So, but at the same time, the sky can show like, yeah, you're dealing with something that's not working for you and you're having to work around that or problem solve. So if there is any tension the first few days of the month, yeah, do your best. And then that's going to clear up. We also have Jupiter and Saturn coming into a trine. This is more of a soft, harmonious, cooperative aspect. We've got two world building type of energies coming together. We've got the borders, the rules, the edges, the container, Saturn, and we've got Jupiter. Everything that makes it meaningful, makes the structure and the operating of it make sense. It makes it useful. So we've got this purposeful and structural element coming together around the first part of September. Um, it's like putting a container around the Jupiterian hope, optimism. Okay, Jupiter, I see that great idea. I see that thing you want to do that's very cool. What people, time, energy, parameters do we need to honor to make that real? So they can work together really nicely, Saturn and Jupiter. So really interesting as the month opens up that way. Mercury is in a sextile with Mars as the month opens up. And so Mercury and Mars in this nice working relationship across Cancer and Virgo. So able to put together the plans, the logic, the rationale with the actions, the missions, the efforts. Able to put those together well. When you get Mars and Mercury working well together, you get smarty pantses, people with the smart, sharp brain that can problem solve a thing, able to work through any of those Mars-Saturn square obstacles. And I also thought it was kind of interesting too, like this Mars-Saturn square is going on, and Mercury can see Mars. Let me back it up. Mercury can see Mars. Mercury can't technically see Saturn by a traditional aspect, but they do have Antisha. No, Contra Antisha. No, Antisha. I get them mixed up. But it's the one where they're sharing the same amount of light. So the Aries time of year, when the sun is in the Aries time of year, and when the sun is in the Virgo time of year, we have about the same amount of daylight. And so there's what we call these minor sympathies between signs that are based on other types of affinities, not just modality, element, and gender, but other things like ascensional times or the amount of light during that time of year. So other types of sympathies. Long story short, technical digression aside, we've got Mercury and Saturn who've got like this tin can telephone. like this kind of connection that we wouldn't have expected otherwise. So something about this detail, organizational ability, assigning processes and procedures to work through whatever the Saturn Mars obstacle is. I feel like that's what's going on. So I'm pretty hopeful about our ability to work through that square of the malefics. And remembering that when I use the word malefic, what I'm really talking about are these extreme energies of extreme dry, extreme cold versus extreme hot. So, and dry. Extreme. And that's why they feel like that. So, we enter the month with the Taurus moon, which is pretty nice. So we get past all this stuff on the first. The second, third, fourth, like the first week of the month. I mean, the moon is really well resourced, taken care of well by either a planet that is doing very well, like when the moon is in Taurus, they're exalted, and through homozonia, Venus can like sense. This is another minor sympathy. They're able to kind of sense that the moon is in their sign over here and able to support them. And when the moon goes into Gemini, they're going to be they're going to have a really strong domicile Lord Mercury who's in Virgo who can see them. And then the moon is in their own sign. So like the first several days, almost the first whole week of the month, the moon is just very well resourced, very functional. Another piece of evidence why I was thinking first week is good to get your important high impact stuff done for the month. Da, da, da. Looks like on the 3rd of September, we're going to have the moon meeting the outer planets. So that might be a pretty buzzy, that'll be the first day of the conference proper. So that'll be a buzzy, busy kind of energy, very air. And that intensity of the outer planets mixing with air, intellectual stuff. Yep, a bunch of nerds congregating at UAC. It makes sense. Could be some hiccups and surprises, but I feel like Mercury ruling over the whole thing. I'm gonna figure it all out. If there are little technical things to work out, it looks like it'll be just fine. And another interesting thing I forgot to mention is that as one other like kind of helpful thing that I forgot to mention with the Mars-Saturn square as the month opens up is that not only do we have Mercury helping out, how I mentioned before, able to see both of these planets, but the moon and Mars are in a mutual reception at the end of August into September, where the moon is going to be in Mars's sign and Mars is in the moon's sign. And moon and Mars are going to be working together better than we would expect otherwise, and they're going to be able to manage Saturn. So whatever Saturn is up to in there, when the moon is in Aries on like August 31st, August 30th, August 31st, that's another thing that I think helps us to negotiate all that. So very cool, very helpful things. When we have a difficult aspect in the sky, you always got to look at the rest of the sky to see if there's anything that's making it better or worse. And then we have the 4th, which is a nice day. I really like the 4th. I actually used this day for an election for something, for a couple things. So I really like September 4th. Get your applications in between, there's a nice little window between 5:54 a.m. Central Time and 7:16 a.m. Central Time. Uh, let's see. Oh yeah, and I did have another thing too on the second application time. If you are going to hand in applications around the first or the second, especially on the second, get it done before 2:30 a.m. Central Time. I don't remember why I said that, so I'm just going to trust past me on that. Right. And the fourth looks nice. Moon is received by Mercury, and then they're in a trine with Venus all night. So that could be cool. Gonna be seen by Mercury. And then they get to have a nice conversation with Venus as the day progresses on the 4th. So that looks pretty nice. That's my math. That's why I'm saying that. And then the moon goes into Cancer, sees the malefics. Moon is squaring Neptune first, which starts at approximately 9:30 a.m. Central Time. The moon is going to square Neptune, and that goes until 3:27 p.m. So on Saturday, on the 5th, this might be kind of a foggy, potentially day with some little confusing moments or hiccups, things like that. So if that happens, don't panic. It's okay to be confused. If you're trying to find food around the city or something around this time, trying to navigate, you might end up on a detour. Uh, Double check your info on Saturday and be sure to extra double check your info all day until 3:27 p.m. Central Time. Go slow, ask questions on the 5th. And knowing that too, we're very well resourced. Like, so Moon gets through this just fine because they're in their own sign. And then on the 6th, we've got Venus starting to have an engagement, getting to be within 3 degrees of opposing Chiron. So that's something to just be aware of. Like Venus, also very well resourced, very diplomatic and relationally intelligent, and able to read the room and navigate conversations, skillfully and all of that. So like very good Venus to be dealing with any kind of relational stuff during this time. But let's be extra careful, take extra good care of ourselves and each other on the night of Sunday, September 6th. Uh, Starting then, extra take good care of yourself and each other. If there's any little tender things that get bumped into, we are having Venus lock into this T-square with Pluto and Chiron, which can be really intense or potent healing experiences, finding really potent healing tools. And it's squares and oppositions. And so there's a tension here. Or there's such an intensity that it's hard to hold, even if it's favorable, constructive, positive. It's just a lot. So could just be the intensity of the environment. I'm going to be binging and like 12 lectures deep. I'm guessing my brain's going to be full at this point. So yeah, kind of an interesting vibe. Not my favorite, but that really gets started on the 6th. And then Venus Chiron opposition, it perfects on the 10th. So it's really the whole last chunk of UAC that's heating up. And again, Chiron is recurrently challenging things sometimes that are, even if they're constructive, they can be somewhat painful to move through or irritating or annoying to move through. And Chiron is healing, mentors, teachers. And so it's running into all of that type of stuff too, which can be really constructive or just neutral, like, oh yeah, teachers, mentors, yep, they're around. So that's going to be a thing. Choose your battles wisely on the 6th. Of course, we have Moon with Mars. We got a chance for confrontation or, again, just running into things that are kind of tender or ouchy. Mars in Cancer can be that thing that wants to express its pain, but in Cancer, it can be hard to do so sometimes. And then the moon is coming right up on that little sticky spot. And so the 6th, do your best. On the 7th, We're going to get the moon coming into the end of the sign, and they're going to be moving into a square with Venus, which looks pretty nice. It's kind of that, it's a lot of peopling going on. The Leo moon starts at 11:50 a.m. Central Time. What did I say? Yeah, 11:50-ish. And that is going to be when the moon plugs into Pluto. So I imagine the afternoon of the 7th is going to get, I guess, even more potent or intense or busy feeling. We've got Moon, Chiron, Venus, Pluto starting to form this Grand Cross thing. So the moon is really feeling into like all the Venus Chiron stuff around teacher, mentors, healing, the things that are recurrently challenging, Pluto, that kind of intensity, transformation, heavy content sometimes. So again, a lot of potent potential for healing or transformation here, but not the most comfy. And it could just again be the intensity of like, wow, I'm in a place with like 100 people, and it's hundreds of people, and it's a lot. So yeah, that'll be my context. Perhaps you are not going to be at a conference. Sometimes I notice what's going on when Venus and Pluto are starting to move in, and when the moon is plugging into that. Things are going on relationally that are highly pressurized because I made them that way because it's important to me. So I often like talk about like meetings that are important, or like when I know I'm going to be hanging out with certain family members and I really want those interactions to go well and without event. That kind of pressurized situation that Pluto can speak to, and then Venus relationally. Yeah, it could just be a meeting going on during that week of work that you want to go well. Maybe it's you're presenting a project you've been working really hard on. It can be really like that kind of good stress, like good tension. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a bad, corrupt, like sketchy deal. Although, you know, notice as well as we get into mid-September, as we get into the end of September, we do have Venus. I mean, they're about to hang out in this kind of square area with Pluto for like weeks. So this is why I've put a red flag in the first 2 weeks of October, is because we do have Venus and Pluto just with each other for a long time, and then Mars comes into that dance as well. But yeah, important meetings aside, if it's not just something that's important to you that you really want to go well, yeah, please do notice manipulation. Please notice when there's any kind of power dynamics or differentials around so that everyone's respected appropriately and that things don't get weird relationally with different levels of power. Um, Notice any coercion going on during September into October. I guess this is my big headline. If you take away anything from this presentation today, if you take away anything about anything I say about the rest of 2026 regarding the beginnings of things, planting seeds, starting brand new things, giving or accepting invitations, I don't want people doing any of that if I can avoid it. Unless you have a really specific niche thing, which I will get to, like some caveats or some exceptions to this rule. But this is not the stuff I'd want to put a seed into for a new collaboration, a new partnership, a new project, anything. I don't want to be dealing with Mars, Pluto, Venus, T-square. No, thank you. Unless, like, let's say you're starting something that is like helping abuse survivors. What if you were starting a nonprofit to help abuse survivors? Or I have someone who's, I heard, doing a rap battle. They're battling with their words in an artistic way. That's going on during this configuration. I'm not But granted, some of those things are not beginnings either. So if you've got stuff going on the first 2 weeks of October, I don't care. Like, that's fine. Do your things, especially if you already started them. Like, if they already have begun, if you seeded them in a different sky than this one, that's fine. But if like someone who you have never met before walks up to you on October 5th and is like, "Hey, do you want to be my business partner?" I'd be like, "I don't know, man. We should get to know each other for like 3 months and then I can vet you." Or let's say you're dating and someone sweeps you off your feet. Oh, this is a dating warning time. Yeah, thanks for me for reminding myself. Dating notice as well. Seeding or initiating, taking invitations on new romantic endeavors as well. I don't love it. Now, let's say you have this in your birth chart. Let's say you're like, well, I have a Venus in Scorpio. I have a Venus, Mars, Pluto T square in my birth chart. Um, Maybe it's fine for you. Maybe it's just a recurrence transit and it's fine. Um, I'm dating someone with a Venus retrograde in Scorpio. I interpret this not as bad for them, but it's still not it's like if you're skiing, this is like a double black diamond difficulty level ski hill. This is not the bunny slopes. Now, people do rad shit on those double black diamond ski slopes. People are doing like 360s and whoa and woo, you know. But you have to be like, know what you're dealing with. So then if you're an astrologer or you're listening to me right now, you're like, oh yeah, those first 2 weeks of October. So like do your weird counterculture stuff. I'm gonna be in a circus show, shaking my tits around again, gloriously. It's been so long. But I'll be back doing that counterculture stuff. So like counterculture, kind of off the beaten path stuff really fits well with the first 2 weeks of October. But if you're like trying to win like the classical traditional French cake baking competition, um, not my favorite week. So really depends on what you're using it for. Not my favorite week. And it starts the end of September. And that was a big digression. And I got ahead of myself because I was going to have this talk with you at the end of the session today or the end of this hour. But sure, why not? Why not just start talking about it right now as we're going to have, yeah, Venus coming into all this. And I mean, honestly, like, look at this. I mean, September 14th, we're not even to the end of the month. And we're already like very starting this dance. So, um, the Venus retrograde stories that are starting more October 3rd, the Mercury retrograde stories starting in October. It's starting like pretty soon, like kind of now, but like pretty soon. So we're gonna watch how those stories unfold. And it's already a good time to start being careful relationally. Because whatever starts to unfold, if it's something you don't love that's unfolding, it's probably not going to get any better as we enter into October. Right. On the, so going back to the 7th and the 8th. So what the heck? How did I even get on this digression? I started talking about Venus getting into this engagement with Chiron and really Pluto as well on September 6th. That perfects on September 10th. But then there's also a nice little benefic enclosure that happens on the 7th and the 8th. Actually, sorry, the 8th and the 9th. Let me share this with you. So this is from astroseek.com. I love looking up their lunar benefic enclosure, lunar malefic enclosure calculator. I think they also call it like the lunar besiegement calculator. Uh, it's just kind of tells you the little high spots, little low spots for the month. And interestingly, this month, because of how the dice roll worked out, we don't actually have any malefic lunar enclosures. The moon does not get sandwiched between Mars and Saturn stuff. But we do have three lunar benefic enclosures this month in September where the moon gets sandwiched between Venus and Jupiter energy. And so the first of those is on September 9th, 8th through the 9th. It is about 1 day total. And it's not like the most ideal form of an enclosure, which is 7 degrees on each side. It's like planet, 7 degrees later, moon, 7 degrees later, planet. This is not that tight. So it's more of a diffuse, nice energy for a day. But universal time that starts at about 4:36 p.m. on September 8th, and that goes until September 9th at 4:57 p.m. I'm sorry, that was 6:36 p.m. to 6:57 p.m. the next day. Um, so yeah, 6 to 6 Central Time. That's gonna be 1:36 p.m. on September 8th. Nice weather through until September 9th at 1:57 p.m. And then we get our Virgo New Moon on the 10th of September at 10:27 p.m. Central Time in the wee hours on September 11th. Everywhere else is going to be in the second decan of Virgo. If you're doing tarot correspondences, that's your Nine of Pentacles. This is a place of craftspersonship, having figured out all your processes and procedures and what stays and what goes in the first decan. You're working away at that and enjoying the fruits of your labor in the second decan of Virgo. And it's a regrouping of this kind of energy of what am I working on in this detail-oriented craftspersonship type of way? What is getting that level of attention from me? And there's a refresh, there's a reset button there around mid-September. We are closing out one cycle of processes and procedures. We're closing out and experiencing the fruits of our month long of labor, maybe in the Virgo part of your chart. And we are getting ready for the next round of processes and procedures. And perhaps this is also a 6-month story since the last full moon that we had in Virgo. Maybe this is a coming to completion of something that in the Virgo area of your life you've been working on for 6 months. So looking at where Virgo is in your chart specifically. So like for this theoretical, of course, it's always Aries rising now. That's the downside of this is you don't get my random one-off, oh, for this random person, although I should try to do that anyway. But if you're an Aries rising, this would be your 6th house. So perhaps this is a reset around September 10th around health. Maybe you're getting done with a month-long health initiative and you're getting ready for the next month. So very earthy, practical things being considered around the 10th. The last aspect was Venus right before. What's its aspect afterwards? The next aspect immediately after that new moon is a Mars sextile. So very energized initiative. Yeah, let's go. Let's do the actions and the efforts in all the small ways we need to do. After the moon gets out of bond, so about 15 degrees away from the sun, about a day later, and right at the end of that being under the bond of the moon, the last conversation they have is Mercury. But then they start to meet their next visible planetary aspect is going to be that opposition with Saturn. So the new moon, it starts off very practically minded, energized, saying, yep, we're going to focus on these tiny details or these small processes and procedures, or we're going to finish up what we've been doing, regroup. And then there's that Mars kind of little ping of energy. But pretty quickly out of the gate, the moon is running into more of an oppositional energy. So whatever you are getting started around September 10th, give it time, like September 11th, 12th, 13th. That new moon energy is still very slow and not, it isn't a sprint out of the gate here for the next month of activity. might be that whatever's trying to be born or trying to open up around September 10th, 11th, 12th is running into some delays, obstacles that perhaps once we get to like September 15th, um, beyond, especially like the end of this month, we'll get Mercury past Saturn. Some of that Saturn energy is going to cool off, not be as delaying, as obstructing. But I think we are going to feel that delay, that obstruction in life around 10th, 11th, 12th of September. Not a terribly afflicted moon, if we consider this Virgo new moon. Um, we have soft or no major aspects with these extreme energies. And also, it doesn't get that much support from other planets. Like Venus can see, but they're not really able to provide much. Jupiter cannot see. So, not super afflicted, also not very supported. Mercury cannot see, and they're in charge of this. So, kind of left to their own devices in the Virgo workshop, not getting a ton of guidance. It feels more then in that way less busy, less active, less constructive, but maybe a very contemplative, reflective, spiritual focus for this new moon as well. That could be another thing. Not very earthy in that kind of way, but if we're thinking about the connections this lunation is not making, yeah, maybe it's just more of a new moon to just rest, not be manifesting or doing your rituals that you want to like turn into something in the material world. Might be better for just resting. Good resting new moon. And yeah, then Venus is in Scorpio. So I'm going to talk about Venus and Scorpio, but before I do, let me check in with this chat, see if there's any questions or concerns. Yeah, hello, Lord Arione. They are also in a Mars year. I am also in a Mars year. Hi. Yeah, I'm not loving it. It has not been my favorite energy so far this year, but you win some, you lose some. But yes, also Lord or in a Mars year. So that's me. Hello, reading aid. The topic is September. We're talking about September. Hello, Delaware Tom. Nice to see you again. Would the 6th be a void internet chat day? Let's find out together. What did I say about the 6th? Oh, yeah, the 6th. Ah, I would say like later in the day on Sunday, the moon is like by 7:30 Central Time on the 6th on Sunday, the moon is 3 degrees separating from Mars. So like that martial energy should be chilling out a little bit more, but we're still getting the dregs. So exercise caution, but yeah, like the 6th is not the day to be keyboard warring. Um, if you're trying to like protect your peace. Yeah, great question. Might be really feeling like we want to have conflicts. Like that's the thingy. That's the funny thing about Mars transits is that I'm always like, oh yeah, pick your battles. But it's always during the energy where it has you wanting to battle though. Like you have to pick your battles because you're wanting to. So it's not easy. Like this is always a way easier said than done thing. And I always have to give the caveat as well that some battles are totally worth picking and saying yes to and going for it. And yeah, sometimes, especially if you're like me and you come from a background of being a bit more conflict avoidant, then what I like to do is use some of this Mars energy sometimes to help give me the strength to do a conflict. So if I needed to advocate for myself, if I needed that kind of martial energy to like assert for myself, I might actually be looking for a Mars transit like this to give me that kind of energy. So it depends on your context, it depends on who you are. I'm usually giving advice to the more warring folks out there. I don't have to tell the other people to be careful because they're already avoiding stuff on their own. But yeah, that's not always good either. Otherwise, things that need to be changed don't get changed if we don't confront it and do a conflict. But yeah, all good things to know because you can do whatever you want, but it's really helpful to know the weather going on. You can go driving in any weather you want, but it's good to know when you're driving in a blizzard or versus a sunny day. And sometimes you got to drive in a blizzard. Yeah, well, I want conflict every day. I have Mars and Scorpio in my 10th in a day chart. So inflamed. I spend all day, every day, keeping my ass out of trouble, picking my battles all day, every day. It's funny because I'm conflict avoidant and I also am like the dog at the window going bork, 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 just barking at the window, just totally ineffective. If I didn't control myself, I would be like a dog at a window. So yeah, totally relatable. Very relatable. Awesome. Thanks for the questions. This is helpful. It's helpful to know what the context is out there. And onward we go. So we've got Venus entering into Scorpio on the 10th, and they immediately get into this decan of the Five of Cups correspondence. So if anyone is privy to the tarot things and you know about the Five of Cups, it's a card that indicates a lot of hunger, a lack of satiation. And so there can be this incredible drive and wanting and yearning in this first part of Scorpio. Very thirsty, potentially. And so very driven, but also maybe very dissatisfied. Not good enough, not enough. So I love thinking about, like, I love the way T. Susan Chang thinks about how to remedy certain tarot cards. She often talks about like, well, what cards are next to it in the circle, and can we say like take away one cup and be at the Four of Cups, which is in my mind more of a card of I'm going to share and I have enough, so I'm going to share this abundance with others. I actually have too much. And what would it be like and if you feel like you don't have enough, go help other people, go be generous, go give to other people so you feel like you are also being given to. Like when you're feeling bad about your own life and you go work at the soup kitchen, it's like that's how you remedy that. And so if you are feeling rather dissatisfied mid-September, if you're very hungry or driven or feel like something is just not enough, you can either respond to that or you can just wait till Venus gets out of that decan, which is going to be never. They're going to be in there forever, actually. Until October 25th. So between September 10th and October 25th, we've got Venus, and at some other times as well, more planets that are in this place of hunger and drive and dissatisfaction. And potentially like relational or about your values and ethics, that being an area of dissatisfaction in your life. Yum yums, enjoyment, pleasure, that being an area of dissatisfaction. So those are all possibilities. Hate to see it for Venus, and also that's kind of the deal. So at this point, Venus is going to be starting to move back into the beams of the sun very slowly, not quite yet, but they're gonna, Venus is gonna slow down, start going in the opposite direction, and then they're gonna fall into the sun in the evening sky. And that's really Venus going on their underworld journey. And when Venus goes to the underworld, Venus, who is in charge of snacks and yum yums and delights, is going to a place where those things do not happen easily or readily. Our enjoyment does not happen as easily or readily. Yum yums and love and kittens and puppies, all that stuff, not as easy to come by. So that's a possibility for Venus in this spot. Notice if those things are coming up inside of you and respond accordingly. Sometimes dissatisfaction doesn't need to be responded to. If I listened to every single little dissatisfaction that happened that arose in me, I'd be living a very different life. It would not be as healthy. So, yeah, let's just be aware of that. And then know as well that Venus in Scorpio can be enjoying things that other people don't get. So it's like, oh, I love the fermented foods. I love the stinky cheese. People who like horror, as a genre. People who like, like sometimes I'll see something. I have not a Scorpio Venus, but an Aquarius kind of afflicted Venus. And like I'll find myself sometimes saying, "Ugh, that's disgusting. I love it." Ah, that's terrible. I love it. It's like this piece of artwork that makes me so uncomfortable and like I hate it and also I love it because it's like that. So, that can be that Venus who is going very expanding outside of the normal expected Venusian pursuits of pleasure. It's not the usual pursuits of pleasure. In Scorpio, we are going to the like, I don't know, I remember my like burlesque time and I knew this one woman who worked it as a dominatrix and had a sex dungeon. That's this, That's this. It's what are we enjoying that maybe other people don't get? That can be fun. Venus and Scorpio can be fun too. I also noticed that Venus and Scorpio, I tend to have very frank, sometimes tender discussions with people. We get really into the shit and we talk about stuff in a deep, complex, tender manner where we're really getting into the heart of something. That can be a nice, a really enjoyable, kind of deep connecting experience when Venus is in Scorpio. Um, more sensitive to relational things, we can kind of separate ourselves a bit and be kind of objective when Venus is in air. And that's part of why Libra is so good at diplomacy because they can kind of take themselves out of that emotional realm and they can just see all the cards on the table and be able to kind of judge things fairly without getting pulled in an emotional direction. Now, sometimes, I mean, think about artists, poets, they are intentionally with care and intention letting themselves get pulled by that emotional state or by that felt feeling and then they like create art from it or something. um, so I don't want to like vilify or condemn one or the other because we all know things too where if we get too intellectual and we're just like, oh, well, what are the deals here? We can start to steamroll people's emotions and become really dismissive of emotions, which is not, but that sometimes that's very harmful. So we need kind of that air stuff sometimes, and we also need that water stuff as well. But Venus is very relationally sensitive in Scorpio. They're feeling the underlying currents of things, they're sensing people's motivations, the kind of things that are going unsaid. Some of that might be accurate info, other times it's not going to be always accurate, but they're sensing things nonetheless. If the vibes are bad in September and October, and you're like, wow, why am I so tired? I didn't work that hard today. Not that much happened, but maybe the vibes were bad. That's enough to exhaust a water planet because it's like I use the metaphor of kitty whiskers. So Scorpio is like a pair of cat whiskers, and they are constantly sensing the world around it. And if you get like a bowl to feed your cat and their whiskers hit the edges of the bowl because the edges of the bowl are too high, they can start to get fatigue in the muscles that try to hold the whiskers back. And I can't help but notice that that also is a great metaphor, analogy for our own energetic kind of stamina, our own emotional, energetic, yeah, resiliency. And if you are noticing a lack of that, or like you're feeling kind of weakened or not as strong, and you're like, I just don't know why, it doesn't make sense on paper, perhaps your energetic body or your emotional body has been dealing with a lot. The vibes might have been off. So, yeah, mind the vibes, mind the room, and you can always leave it if the vibes are bad. or at least hopefully you can. So that's Venus and Scorpio. There's cool stuff, there's challenging stuff. We'll get more into that in October. We're going to talk a bit about Venus's descent. Um, yeah, I think that's all my thoughts. And, it's worth noting they're going to be starting this dance, this three-part dance that eventually, like, Mars will get into. That's the third part of it. But, like, mid-September, we see Venus applying to Pluto. And then, like, September 16th through, I mean, pretty much the end of the month, they are then a few degrees away from Pluto. So that's good. I'll take the separation. They're at 8 by the end of the month into October. Pluto's at 3 degrees. And then as we get more and more into October, then we're going to get that square heating up again. So this is a three-parter. Let's actually get the three parts. I should have before. We got September 15th, October 20th, and December 9th. So, September 15th and even like the week mid-September, relationally speaking, this is not when I would start dating somebody brand new who you don't know very well. Or at least just keep your head on a swivel so you can be super safe and empowered. It's not when I would take an invitation mid-September for that brand new collaboration with that person you've never met, who's like seemingly too good to be true. Around October 20th, part 2 of that story, and the final part of that story in December. So long after the stations, we get the final piece of that Pluto-Venus story. All right, good to know. I think that's what I have to say about them. And moving on to our next topic, Uranus. What about them? They're stationing. So they're going to be stationing on September 10th. That's right. That was that big day. We're having Venus change signs, Mercury changes signs. We get Uranus stationing. We get a new moon all the same day. What a big vibe shift. Speaking of the vibes, a big vibe shift around September 10th. And then we also get Uranus stationing, and then they're going to move backward. They're going to move back to 1 Gemini, 1 degree, 40 arc minutes of Gemini, and then station direct at that 1 degree on February 8th of 2027. So if you've got any points or planets in mutable signs, Gemini, Pisces, Sagittarius, Virgo, if you've got anything between 1 and 5 degrees of those mutable signs, you might be noticing in the next 6 to 12 months this Uranus stuff really pinging you strongly. So if you've got any planets in early Pisces, early Sag, early Virgo, as Uranus moves back, they're going to just be really hanging out in this area, sending their love beams to these places. So you'll be maybe noticing more of Uranus's breakthroughs, sudden insights, interruptions, disruption. New tech. Prometheus gave us fire. Stuff like that. So Uranus is stationing. Also, around the time that outer planets station, because like then they're retrograde for 4 or 5 months. And I don't really care about the retrograde part per se, but I do care about the stations because that's when a planet is really like stopping their progress in the sky and they're just sitting at the same spot, which is pretty remarkable. So we can say that maybe that planet is louder. So perhaps around the 10th, we're going to have all these ingresses, which are loud in their own right. And we're having Uranus stations. So perhaps these disruptions are louder, interruptions are louder around the 10th. Sudden insights or breakthroughs as well, potentially new technology coming in around the 10th. all of that could be going on just because Uranus is stationing, and now we've got Uranus being louder or more prominent. We've got Mercury entering Libra at 11:20 a.m. on the 10th. Not quite out of the beams yet, but almost. They're going to pretty much start opposing Neptune right away. So this is not great for handing in applications, not great for trying to do really clear communication. It could be fine to communicate around spiritual or artistic matters around the 10th, 11th, 12th. But if you're trying to do logistics with people, plan with people, have like conversations that you need to be clear or precise, you may have to work extra hard at that on September 10th, 11th, 12th. And then, I mean, already by the 12th, Mercury's moving away from that confusing element, and they're moving more into realism with Saturn, what is really here, but then they're also moving into that energy of rejection. So this is the part starting September 10th, not so keen on handing in applications and requests. All right, and then Friday on the 11th, this week is pretty much characterized by Venus and Mercury moving through the outers. So we're gonna have these two personal planets both navigating some outer planet stuff. So that should be pretty interesting, September 10th through the 13th. We get a little bit of a helping hand, so like not my favorite for like applications, requests. And yet Mercury is entering their own bound from the 14th of September through the 19th of September. So like the 19th, I really kind of like. Mercury's beyond that opposition with Saturn. They're still in their own bound. But this should help a little bit. This will make things work a little better. Mercury will be able to keep their bearings even if they're getting like a trine from Uranus and an opposition from Neptune by sign. They're much more able to handle it when they're in their bound. So that helps out between the 14th and the 19th with logistics, planning, purchasing, communications. We have a benefic enclosure on the 14th and 15th. This is going to be, and from Astro-seek, universal time, a nice little patch of weather when the moon is in Scorpio. So it's a Scorpio moon, so take that for what you will, but we get a little help. It's a little more pleasant than it might be otherwise. And that's going to be from 11:32 on September 14th, 11:32 a.m. until the next day at 2:35 p.m. Universal time. This is going to be Central Time from 6:32 in the morning on September 14th. And that nice patch of weather goes until the next morning at 9:35 p or a.m. on the 15th. So yeah, moon's going to be sandwiched between the rays of Venus and Jupiter. Very helpful when the moon is not usually super supported in Scorpio, but here they'll be getting some help. So a little better of a Scorpio moon than we're usually dealing with. And then of course, we're also going to get our last, we've had a few of these, but the moon and Mars are going to be in a mutual reception across this time Scorpio and Cancer. And that is also part of this lunar benefic enclosure experience. So in terms of like Scorpio moons, is a pretty good one. Very much more supportive than usual, much more functional than usual. All right, and then we get to about the 15th, and now this is where we've got Mercury getting 15 degrees away from the sun. Depending on location, probably still pretty hard to see, but they're going to start to get easier and easier and easier to see now as September progresses, information coming out more readily. Planning, logistics, purchasing happening more readily, potentially, than maybe under the beams. Although, I mean, I kind of, so Mercury coming out of the beams around the 15th, but they're not, again, they're not done with this Saturn opposition until the 18th. So Mercury is, even though they're out of the beams, they're still pretty, there's some energy kind of holding them back a little bit. But so let's just say the last third of the month, Mercury gets a bit more free. Um, Venus Pluto square perfects on the 15th. Is that? Yeah. The Chiron stuff perfected on the 10th. The Pluto stuff perfects on the 13th. Venus starts to make some reasonable separation the evening of the 15th, but we're still going to be getting the dregs of that. So everyone's still kind of on dating notice mid-September. Vet the people very wisely. We also have okay, this is an asteroid thing. We're bringing in Juno. Juno, usually people are talking about marriage and stuff with them, but I like to think about just commitment in general. Any type of commitment, collaboration, two people feeling beholden to each other for whatever reason. Yes, Juno. And they are retrograde right now. They're moving. They've been doing this dance with Pluto since like the early part of 2026. Um, they're doing an opposition with Mars. So, unless you are about to make a commitment mid-September with a chef or a personal chef or a martial artist or something, a martial arts teacher, like, unless that's going on, I don't know about this for like making like commitments that you want to go smoothly. I'm a little skeptical of it. It has its uses. Again, Mars is a great personal chef. They are a great martial artist. They are great if you are like, maybe you're like a firefighter and you're like committing to making everyone chilly from here on out. Like, that's fine. Cool. Juno Mars opposition, fine. Um, but yeah, like, not when I would do a betrothal. This is not good weather for betrothals. I wanted to tell people about that. Thank you, Juno. Bye, Juno. All right. Chiron returning to Aries on the 17th. So we're going to get Chiron back into Aries. They're going to be in there until April 14th of 2027. So about, what is that? 9, 10, 11, 12. That's like 6, 7 months. We got about half a year left of Chiron and Aries, and then they're going to be done with that for good. They do station, it looks like, in January at 26 Aries. So Chiron is going to get as far back as 26 degrees Aries. And so if you have any planets or points that are at the end of cardinal signs, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, Chiron is going to be touching on those planets or points you might have for the next 6 months or so. They're going to do one last pass. It's the last part of that Chiron story. And I doubt it's going to be a new story. I mean, it could be, but it's probably just going to be a continuation of what you've been experiencing really with Chiron in the Aries part of your chart. I mean, for the last like 2 years. They've been hanging out in that decan since 2024, 2025. So, yeah, whatever you've been up to in Aries, one last little go of learning curves, the struggle that leaves you as an expert. the struggle that leaves you being the teacher or the mentor because you struggled, and so you know. Chiron, to me, my favorite example is the addiction counselor. I don't want to hear anything about addiction from a square who's never dealt with it. Are you serious? Get out of here. We need a Chiron person for that who's dealt with struggles. That's what you need. So, um, Aries, cardinal placements. We're going to have one last mentor, Chiron teacher, centaur teacher coming to visit you. Alrighty, and Mercury is now separating from Saturn. Now it's going to be a little bit more safe again to hand in your applications and requests starting around the end of the 18th, 19th. Actually, the 18th, Mercury starts separating from Saturn by about 5 a.m. Central Time. So it's better and better and better as the day goes on. The 18th is kind of good for applications. Get them in before 11 p.m. Central Time on the 18th, before the moon moves into Capricorn. Mercury is now applying to Jupiter by a friendly aspect, which is going to perfect on the 21st. So we've got, we get Mercury leaving this opposition with Saturn, and then they're actually going to move into the yes person more on, starting 5 a.m. Central Time on the 18th through, it looks good till about 11 p.m. Central Time on the 18th, because then the moon changes though. So the moon starts being a problem, but we do have Mercury Jupiter, and I like the Mercury Jupiter sextile. That's going to help with requests, things like that. And then we got the equinox. Sun is going to enter Libra on September 22nd, about 7 p.m. Central Time. And this is when we have equal amounts of day and night. Both the northern and southern hemisphere are each having these equal moments of light. And in the northern hemisphere, now we are starting our descent into the most extreme amounts of nighttime. And in the southern hemisphere, now they are starting their ascent, their climb into more and more daylight. So that is what's going on. Of course, the sun is going to lock in with these outers for a few days. So it might be a pretty interesting, potent few days, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Not when I would, hmm, if you generally have a hard time advocating for yourself, it's not going to be any easier on the 22nd, 23rd. We have what is a beautiful opposition with Neptune, Lord of forgiveness, spirituality, connection with the ether and the realms. And we get oppositions, which can sometimes be kind of relational. Because like this first, seventh house thing going. So like if you want to like on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th of September, connect with spirit, connect with people over love, forgiveness, spirituality, connect with people over just yeah, that kind of oneness and connection. Yes. Um, Having psychic, things with people. Call your psychic. Great day for a call to your psychic. Not a great day to have to like assert, advocate for yourself using your healthy ego because Neptune dissolves the ego. And some of our ego is healthy. We have to have like this idea of, I'm just meaning like the very base notion of a self that exists, that I think exists and is consistent enough for me to regard and to take care of. And so, going to the grocery store, feeding myself, etc., standing up for myself when I need to. Those are all really good sun, solar, healthy ego things, but Neptune kind of dissolves it a bit. So, this isn't a day to like have to stand up for yourself. Ideally, it's not great for that. Um, yeah, not a great day for battles because you're gonna be more wanting to like, well, maybe if you want to reconcile, it's a good day for reconciliations. So if you want to have a conversation around forgiveness, reconciliation, good for that, I would say. Um, One caveat, watch out for deception. Neptune can be deception. Happy equinox. Good for diplomacy. Negotiation is pretty good here, but like it's really generous and benefiting the other person. So like if you're trying to negotiate for your own gain and benefit, it's a little harder for that. Um, yeah, lean into your aesthetics, your arts, your relationships spiritually. So I think that's what I have to say about the sun's ingress. We have, the ruler of this place not doing too hot. We've got the exaltation lord of this place also not doing very hot. So, yeah, the sun, Mercury, planets in Libra, really lacking support, not our strongest. And yet, it is nice to have these two planets being diplomatic and relationally smart in the sky when we've got some other more difficult things going on, like Mars and Saturn being unhappy. One thing that I think is going to help a little bit, granted, it depends on who you ask, because I've heard some people say, oh, it's helpful to have a planet in their bound, even if it is in a place of their fall, like Venus going into their Venusian bound. I've heard people say it helps, like that Hellenistic idea around what a bound or a term is. It's like your special place where you have more respect and agency and like, if Venus is going to have their Venusian things, they're more likely to have access to that Venusian stuff in their own bound. So we could say, anytime that Venus is between, what is that? Between 7 and 11 degrees of Scorpio, which they're going to spend a significant time between 7 and 11. They're going to be at like 7, 8 degrees for a while. Um, Maybe that'll help Venus a little bit during their retrograde time. I've also heard the opposite. And this is more like, I think, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I want to say it is the more like medieval Persian Islamicate note that it actually is like extra ouchy for them because in their own bound, they're just faced with the incongruency even more acutely. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I have seen Mercury be in their bound and have it not really help. I've also seen it sometimes help. I feel like this is very inconsistent for me in my own observation. But for those of you who do use the bounds, I wanted to make this known that, what is it? Between September 24th and October 11th, Venus is in their own bound. So maybe they'll be helped out a little bit there. On the 25th, Sun Neptune opposition perfects. So we'll have that few days of that kind of dreamy, connective, spiritual potential with others that wraps up. And we also get Mercury starting to walk into this funky part of the sky. Oh boy. And I totally miss the Mars Chiron square. Of course, that's there too. On the 26th of September, do not hand in applications or make requests. We have the moon running into Saturn. I know we have the mutual reception, but that's not enough for me. This is where we start watching our words. So the end of September, geez, let's even back it up. Let's start watching words like on the 22nd of September, and then especially like the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th. Yeah, all the way those 2 weeks in October, we're gonna watch our words. They might come off more harsh or sharp than we intended, more forceful than we intended. So do your best when you're communicating end of the month to be gentle, to ask questions, to try not to jump to assumptions. Be gentler than you think you need to be with the people that you love. And this is also why I was saying if you have any really important conversations to have in September, front load the month, do it earlier, because this is the kind of stuff we're running into at the end of September. We've got Mars and Chiron coming together in a square, which can be like tender, painful conflict or healing through conflict, which is sometimes how it goes. Sometimes that's how it's got to go, and it's not comfy. But yeah, this is a recipe that's brewing here toward the end of the month that just looks really complicated and sensitive, and that we will need to hold with care. We got a full moon in Aries. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Mars in Leo. There's a few things left. Let's check on the chat though. Let's take a little break. See how it's going out there. All right. What day are we on? Yeah, we're on August 26th. We're almost done. My God, I'm going to get done before 2 hours this time. Thank goodness. Hello, Cosmic Bloomin'. Welcome. Oh, good. Someone's having some good opportunities. The eclipse season, it can be seen as kind of ominous. And it's also an exciting time where really great beginnings can happen. Like something will start to unfold that is just really important and sometimes favorable. And if you were going to have an eclipse, to have something favorable come out of it, um, I really, really like our last one that we had. So the last one that we had in Leo, great new beginnings, great endings, this reset, but with Jupiter there, with Venus looking over, and with not harm from Mars, not afflicted by Mars. Saturn's coming in at a soft angle. So like, yeah, it was a really, if I could pick an eclipse to tether myself to if I was going to, it'd be this one. This is a nice one. Um, hmm. Yeah, I really don't even like using the word nice with an eclipse, but yeah, if there's going to be like this favorable stuff to get tied to that clock, because it can sometimes just be more of a neutral every 6 months clock. Sure. But yeah, pretty exciting. And because sun is here, we got a luminary that it's different than eclipses in any of these other signs because the sun doesn't have the same amount of power. I mean, maybe in Aries, of course they're exalted there, but yeah, Aries eclipses for the sun and Leo eclipses for the sun. The sun is going to have a little bit more agency, I think, to deal with it. And I think that matters. Makes me want to put more of a favorable spin on it. Yeah, Jupiter is going to help. So someone is wondering about Mars moving through their Leo first house coming up soon here at the end of the month. And they have a day chart. So of course, when you have a day chart, you want to be careful with Mars. I've got one of those too. And at the very least, Mars is busy. Mars is doing busyness. Mars is effort. It's missions. It is confronting something, just doing a decision, going for it. And Jupiter helps during this time to soften the blow if there are any blows, soften edges if there's any sharp edges. If there are any inflammations, let's say you stub your toe, let's say you get an inflamed wrist or something. Uh, Jupiter is here to help. Jupiter is a remedy, a medicine, a doctor, an exercise, a piece of knowledge or understanding that helps deal with whatever Mars is bringing. So, as much as, yeah, Mars makes me nervous sometimes, yeah, it really helps, makes me feel a little better to have Jupiter here. So, my advice for everybody, including myself, when Mars is around, especially when it's starting to get in touch with your body, mind, spirit, health, the first house, the sixth house, stuff like that, slow down, do one thing at a time, even if that's like hard. uh, because yeah, like Mars is singular focus. Mars focuses on one thing. Um, Mars does one thing at a time. And if you start dividing your attention, that's when you can start getting in trouble. Yeah, if you start noticing too, like you don't have to go looking for inflammation, like if there's none there, but it's kind of like, well, if you do notice anything come up, get it checked out if you have health insurance. Don't do the wait and see thing that people do sometimes. But yeah, if you notice you're like, oh, I'm getting more bumps and bruises and scrapes and stuff with Mars in my first, slow down. And then you can get like half as many of those. My dad has Mars in his first house in an ambiguous day chart. It's a sunrise chart. And he's a carpenter. And I have never met anyone who gets as many, just constantly dings, bruises, cuts, scrapes, just constantly. And it's part of his job, if you're dealing with stuff like that. So some of it's pretty normal. I notice it when Mars goes through my first that kind of stuff happens more to me. But yeah, it doesn't have to be a big deal. And the other thing you want to notice too is, and I don't know if you said this or not, but if Mars is not a Time Lord for you this year, it's not going to be as big of a deal. It'll not be the headlines. And finally, we can always just forget whatever Mars means. We can just kind of like put on a shelf that they mean conflict and bumps and bruises. And we can note that Mars rules a set of topics. So like for this theory, well, I guess, yeah, if you're a Leo rising, this would be bringing in ninth house topics and fourth house topics for you into your face, into your front door of your first house. You're going to be dealing with fourth house things from Mars ruling, that's Scorpio fourth, and your Aries ninth. Good luck. Oh, yeah, casual contract. Yeah, awesome. Yep. Yeah, so like again, if you've already got things rolling as we enter into October, if you've already got things, set and operating, I think for those cases, then what that first 2 weeks of October, the end of September, the first 2 weeks of October is going to be is us like executing these things, doing these things, and like maybe feeling the pressure of, again, wanting it to just turn out really well, wanting to do a good job. And that's where the pressure comes from. And we knock it out of the park, you know? Ah, yes. Okay, here we go. Thank you for the feedback, Philip, on the Leo rising example. They had the ninth, Mars bringing in ninth and fourth house stuff, and they are moving away from family for higher education. Fourth house family, ninth house education, ninth house faraway places. Astrology. I don't know how it works, but it works. Yeah. Oh, I need to remind myself of these things. I have Mars going into my seventh house of partners, and I am in a Mars year. And I'm like, oh no, my clients are gonna be mad at me. What am I gonna do? Who am I gonna offend this time? Oh God. So I'm gonna be on extra right speech duty for the rest of the year, but the rest of my life, but especially the rest of this year. Right speech duty. Oh God. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the comments. Let's wrap up this month. I can do it. We can do it. Let's talk about this Aries full moon, which is going to have a mutual reception with Mars. So Mars is at the very last part of Cancer. And we got this full moon, and they are seen by Mars, and Mars can see the moon, and moon can see Mars. And what is a square really starts to act like a trine. I find that when Mars and Moon are in a mutual reception across, especially the Aries Cancer one, where you've got two cardinal signs, something works really well, way better than you think it would, but only for a short amount of time. So it's here for a good time, but not a long time. So whatever you got going on around the 26th of September, 27th of September, I think it's going to work out really well for you, but try not if like try to do more of a short-term ad hoc like thing with this full moon. I wouldn't be using this to like release a big 10-year plan or something. Um, but yeah, really helpful, and it's like this burst of initiative, and it's very motivated, but it's also very caring. You get that initiative of Mars, that let's go, but then Moon is like, how do we make this receivable? How do we make this usable by people? So it can become, yeah, a really good combo. Saturn is here. So, like, of course, there's still the lingering whatever obstacles, delays, having to say no to certain things in order to move forward, having to adhere to certain parameters, rules, things, limitations. Yes, and it's still working pretty well. It is separating from Neptune, thank God, but it's still getting the dregs of that. So make sure whatever is being released or shared around September 26th, 27th is clear and as concise or clear as you can make it. I would say for this whole lunation cycle, like that Virgo new moon on the 10th, the Aries full moon on the 26th, smart goals, doing smart goals. That's going to be very Virgo, very, very Saturn, and it will help with any Neptune muddiness, murkiness, confusion. So, smart goals are goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant to your life and purpose and what you're doing, and timely. Do we need to do it right now? So, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely. If you make sure that to describe all of these things, you are going to be so better set up to reach that goal. So, that's what I would keep in mind for this one, the whole month. We've got the first decan of Aries here. This is where we make that initial decision. We cut away the other option and then move forward and pursue a thing. Before Aries was a ram, they were sometimes a constellation that was referred to as the hired man by like the Greek speaking cultures around the Mediterranean around the time of Hellenistic astrology. Before Hellenistic astrology, it was called the hired man. And there's also things about Aries that have to do with procurement. So a word that Valens used to describe Aries is procuring, one who procures, one who goes and gets a thing. And Mars goes and gets a thing. Mars takes, Mars gets. So in this first decan, we're going to get something. We're going to procure something. Um, yeah, people talk about like that entrepreneurial spirit. I'm going to go for something. So if we can do that with some specificity in mind, we can use the Neptune for the vision. Ah, this is like the amazing ideal version. This is how this could turn out if we really put our mind to it. We got Saturn, that realism, and then we can use our smart goals to make sure that we're not getting into Neptune muddiness or Delulu, making Delulu Salulus. Ah, let's see. The like very next aspect appears to be the moon running into Saturn, which, I mean, they're still under the bond at that point. It's like the moon is still not totally coming out of this full moon yet. But once they do, they get like 15 degrees away from the sun, then they're going to be making some contact with Jupiter. So there's actually kind of a nice aftertaste, kind of a hopeful, forward-looking flavor in the way that this full moon wraps up. Uh, so that's nice. 'Cause yeah, the new moon wasn't like that. The new moon ended up having more of a conversation with Saturn. So it was more of that slow start, dealing with kind of the realism of what is the work that is needed. But here on the full moon, it's a little bit lighter and more exciting and just like, yeah, more Hakuna Matata, optimistic. The full moon illuminates what is beginning, what is being decided. Mars cuts things away, and they're at the end of Cancer, which is interesting. So something about this full moon, it really does relate to something about the Cancer part of your chart. So try to take those house topics and work them in to the Aries house topics. And the mutual reception just ties these together even more. So full moon going to be about your Aries parts and also your Cancer parts of your chart. What is being decided? What are we launching off into? It's exciting. It's not super comfy at the same time as this full moon. We're getting into, yeah, really strong Mercury, Chiron, Mars T-square. A little loose with Pluto, but still it's giving difficult conversations of some kind or a problem-solving process that is trying to unfurl but is not. It's like when you see the solution to a problem and you're like, yep, that's the solution, and I don't want to do it, but you know you got to do it. It's like I know the solution for my tub is that I have to declog it. Like there's no way around it. I got to do it. I don't like it, but it is the reality. Uh, oh, a small good window on the 27th. Yeah, it's when the moon is applying to Jupiter. There's a nice little window on the 27th from 2:25 p.m. Central Time to 7:25 p.m. Or I'm sorry, it's during the 27th. It ends on the good time on the 27th. It ends at 2:25 p.m. Central Time. It's over at 2:25 p.m. Central Time. That's set about 7:25 p.m. Universal Time. So a little later on the 27th. I would do your requests before 2:30 Central Time on the 27th. We are watching our words. We are watching our purchases. We are watching our ideas. It is the end of the month in September, and we are also getting Mars entering Leo. So let's see, if my theory that they're very different declinations might ameliorate or make this not as loud. We got Pluto at 23 south and Mars at 21 north. So very different in their height, even if they're making a contact in the other plane. But this is still a pick your battles time. The 28th is a mind your own business day. We got the moon plugging into all this. Mars overcomes Mercury. Anytime Mars is overcoming Mercury, there can be a sense of urgency that is not real. It can just be like, I feel like I need to do this right now, like yesterday. Mars with the quickness, not always real. And sometimes it's other people who are like putting their sense of urgency on you, like, you need to do this now. And it's like, no, I don't. Anyone who's had a boss before who like doesn't understand their own discomfort, Like when people are uncomfortable and they try to end that discomfort by like completing a task when really that task is not going to solve their discomfort. Or also like it's just like, yeah, deal with your discomfort. This doesn't need to be done right now. There are other things that might need to be done first. So the order of operations, if that needs a little adjustment, if the actions, the words, the plans and the doing of the plans, it's like there's an adjustment or amendment that needs to happen on the 27th, 28th, 29th. So end of September, be flexible, adaptable. These are the fixed signs are getting involved here. So they generally don't want to change the plan. They want to stick to it, but do your best to be flexible at the end of the month. Be aware if a sense of urgency is actually real or if it's just discomfort that someone needs to deal with. The Mars Chiron square is done by about 7 a.m. on the 27th. So that's good, at least. Mars gets away from that. They still got to deal with Pluto, but at least the Chiron stuff is done. Completing. This is really when the Mars retrograde story, we could say it begins. I mean, it doesn't actually get going until 2027. Mars is eventually going to station retrograde around the first part of, it's like between 7 or 10 Virgo or somewhere around there. That's January 10th of 2027. And then they'll do a retrograde until April of 2027 in Leo. But Mars just got into the room for that story. Not quite in the pre-retrograde shadow phase yet, but yeah, we could say that right now is the start of that story if you want. And then Mars opposite Pluto happens. It perfects on October 3rd and 4th. So leading up to October 3rd, 4th, making sure that if there is like a lot of intense feelings of irritation, anger, frustration, that there's an outlet, that there's a safe audience or outlet who can hear you, who can hear your anger, or a way to express that, get it out. So you're not just squashing it down with the squasher downer. Because Pluto is really good at squashing stuff down sometimes. Pluto also, so if they're not squashing it down, they're amplifying it, or both. Why not both? Why not amplify it and squash it down? Sounds healthy. So make sure you're dealing with that at the end of the month. If there are pressures that are just building and building and building, make sure there's a pressure release valve that you're hitting at the end of the month so there aren't any overflows, overwhelms, tantrums, things like that that can sometimes come up. And again, don't like to tell people how they're going to feel. Sometimes it's not you, sometimes it's other people, and sometimes it's not like that kind of really unfavorable outcome. Sometimes it's like, okay, what's getting dialed up in intensity here? Mars effort, Mars actions. I am being asked to do a lot. I am being asked to like take a lot of actions. Or maybe there's a high pressure decision that is happening at the end of September into October. So giving yourself care and space to make any big decisions, knowing that the pressure is going to start to get off of that need to decide if there is one, that starts to chill out after October 3rd or 4th. So if you don't have to like do an action, make a decision, if you can wait until like even after the 4th, I think that will actually be helpful because then we'll at least get Mars moving away from Pluto and having that kind of intensity in the rear view and not in the front view. So yeah, let's see how things kind of land at the end of the month. And another cool thing, I guess, um, once Mars gets into Leo, which like, yeah, the 27th, let's say the 28th, that's a mind your own business day, I think, probably. All things considered. Yeah, like starting the later on the day on the 27th, that's when Mars gets into Leo. It's like mind your own business at the end of the month in general. But the cool thing here is that when Mars gets into Leo, then Venus is square with Mars. Now Venus is received. Now Mars sees Venus by this aspect that they're about to make with each other. And uh, Mars is seeing Venus in their home, saying, "Hey, Venus, you're in my house. Do you know where the toilet paper is? Do you know where the snacks are? I'll tell you. I'll tell you where the snacks are. You're not going to like any of them, but I will tell you where they are." And so Venus gets this little modicum of help. I had something very similar to this in my last solar return chart. I had a Scorpio moon in my solar return chart that was applying directly to an overcoming square from Mars in Leo, just like this, except it was moon and not Venus. And it ended up being really constructive. And it was not a bad thing. It was not a bad year. It wasn't a bad aspect. And it was that reception. And this is why there's a whole book on reception and like horary astrology, very big on reception. It makes a huge difference. So cool. And eventually, we're going to have the sun in Scorpio, and Mars and Sun will be working together. So some of this like fixed kind of energy we're going to be having over the course of the fall, northern hemisphere, spring, southern hemisphere. Some of this stuff that is kind of intense. There's these little ameliorations, little like helping hands that kind of take the edge off in some ways. So that's cool. 28th, mind your own business. 29th, we get a lunar benefic enclosure. This one. Just gonna keep sharing this with y'all because that feels easier. On the 29th of September, the universal time, there's a nice little patch of weather between 4:35 in the morning and 11:35 at night. So pretty much the whole day, universal time. We have a Taurus moon that's going to be snuggled in between some nice rays from Venus and Jupiter. Central time, that is actually late on the 28th at 11:35 p.m. on the night of the 28th into the 29th at 6:35 p.m. So a little earlier, but that's the nice patch of weather. So do what you need to in there. We get Mercury starting to square Pluto as the month ends. So this is where our minds might get a little sticky if words or thoughts are hanging around longer. If your mind is stuck on a thing, if you're really hyper focusing very well, remember to have snacks. It's not my favorite configuration to deal with talk about Pluto things, but it can be a really impactful time to discuss or navigate Pluto challenges, themes of big change, corruption, or manipulation. Watch out for manipulation, coercion at the end of the month. Again, don't go looking for it if it's not there, but also validate if you are noticing it. You can be like, oh, yeah. It's like when you're outside when it's snowing out and you start to feel under your feet, even if you haven't seen it, you start to feel, oh, am I walking on ice? Is it a little slippery out here? And then you look around and you look down and you're like, oh, yeah, there is ice. Similar here. I'm not like maybe there's not ice, but if I start noticing, I'm like, oh yeah, the weather is here for that. So I'm not gonna looking for people manipulating me at the end of the month. I'm not gonna be paranoid. But if I notice it at the end of the month, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, the weather is here for that. So I'm going to heed it and not give them the benefit of the doubt like I might normally do. Okay. And I think that's it. Is that it? Yes. So again, like the fourth piece of evidence why I said earlier in the month is a little better. Earlier in September, we get Mercury words talking in a trine with Pluto. So much more able to deal with complexity using our words to plan or deal with things that are out of our control. Um, yeah, deal with commerce, money, buying and selling a thing that is difficult. or where it's very like a lot of money or something like trying to get your car replaced. Uh, Mercury much more able to do that, I think, easily and well early September versus later September when they're in a square with Pluto. I think that's it. I'm leaving everyone on a bit of a cliffhanger here. Um, I think I mentioned enough things about October, though. I think it's pretty clear what we're going into. Yeah, it's like at the end of the month, I wrote that the sky, it's more like a hot potato versus earlier in the month, we have warm potato. So I think I'll leave it at that. Good luck as we enter the end of the month, everyone. Let me see if there's any questions, concerns. Not really looking like it. I think everyone is good. Last call. If anyone does have any certain days out of the month they wanted me to look at or explore, and remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, um, whatever buttons you want to gently embrace in order to help my cause. I don't monetize any of this. I tried the other year and I didn't make like any money making it worth me not swearing. I would rather swear and not worry about the whole monetization thing on here than make the $130 I made in 2025. So yeah, I don't monetize, but please then extra hit the like and subscribe buttons for me. Good luck, everyone, in your September ahead. We got through the eclipses almost. We're going to get through these eclipses. Um, mm, Rest in peace, Dolly Parton and Tim Curry. Wow. It's never the right people. It's never the right people. Discount code CONNECT for 15% off any of my services between now and the end of September. Um, Yeah, I also have a sliding scale. So if that 15% off is still not enough to afford my services comfortably, check out my sliding scale. You probably, even if, you don't think that you qualify, email me. Uh, don't have to tell me anything you don't want to tell me about, but I don't have any forms or applications. But just email me at aligninlightastro@gmail.com if you're interested in or have questions about the sliding scale. Yeah, check out my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com. I have a newsletter sign up. My newsletter just went out for this month, but I send one out around the sun's ingress every month, around the 20th, 30th of every month. And that's where I announce my events, my discount codes. And I am not going to have it this month, but more in October is going to be my next group reading event. So about 4 times a month, or sorry, 4 times a year. I am doing a little gallery reading where it's just pay what you can, donation based. Don't have to pay anything if you don't want to, but you can come and get your chart read, kind of like a free clinic. Just kind of come and go as you please, and I sit there for a couple hours, and people can get little micro readings. It is also a good opportunity if you're interested in seeing how I read with people. It's kind of an open reading format where people can see how I talk to someone and talk through their birth chart with them. So if you're interested in that as a student, um, if you want a micro reading and you are okay with obviously that audience experience, having that gallery there, I wanted to have that event for that. If that's good for you, then that's why I have that event. I will have more details in October. I'm going to wait till the sun gets past that opposition with Neptune. I want clarity. Good for spiritual stuff, but not for clarity. So I need clarity. So I'm going to wait till that's done and then I'll schedule it. I think that's it. My next thing is going to be my office hour, which is going to be September 10th at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I will just have gotten back from UAC, so I'll probably be talking about that too. But that's my next event, so I'll see you all there. Good luck, and if you have any questions, of course, again, email me or you can comment below. All right? Thank you, everyone, so much. And again, thank you also for your comments.